Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar about hosting military spouse fellows, sharing tips and tricks for success in hosting fellows. My name is Crystal Cochran. I'm going to do a little bit of a slow intro to give a little bit of time for people to join in. And by the way, happy Friday and happy kickoff for Memorial Day. And thanks so much for joining us and prioritizing us as your head may be shifting over to a long weekend. And because it is Friday, I decided to go casual and I have my coffee, so you'll see me drinking and keeping my caffeine going as we talk, and branding, you'll notice as well. Always a good thing to have your branding in your webinar. So, so with that, let me go ahead and just get things started and kick off. Oh, hey, I see me. So again, my name is Crystal Cochran. I'm the director for the Military Spouse Fellowship Program. I'm really excited to be here today talking with you. A little bit about my background. I've been with Hiring Our Heroes for 4 years, came from the corporate fellowship team where I sort of grew up with Hiring Our Heroes. And last summer, I launched the Military Spouse Fellowship Program, which is just an incredible opportunity as a spouse to do something that's really, really impactful, to start a program that we know is an incredible opportunity for spouses, just exactly what they need at the right moment, just the opportunity to get their foot in the door. So with that, let me introduce my panelists, my co-speakers here. So I want to turn it over to our friends at USAA, who are not only sponsors of the program, but fantastic hosts and friends. And so I'm really excited to be joined today by Christy Leroy and Steve Miller. And let me turn over to Christy to introduce herself.
Hey, good morning. Happy Friday. My name is Christy Leroy. I'm a director of program project management at USAA. I am in the bank portion of USAA. Obviously, it's a very large financial services organization. I actually started out in claims and have been in the bank for about 4 years. My total career with USAA has been 11 years so far. Very excited to participate today. I'm very excited to support this program and to continue to support it as well.
Thanks so much, Christy. And let me also turn it over to Steve Miller to introduce himself.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. Happy Friday. Steve Miller, also, I'm a lead program project manager at the bank, report to Christy, really great team to be on. Part of my background, 28 years in the Navy, started off enlisted and then went on to fly helicopters and do some other fun things. And so it's been really great. Then I joined USA about 2 years ago. And so I've been in the veteran and mil-spouse mentoring network for about the last 5 years. It's been very rewarding and very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Steve. Also, we have with us Stephanie Murphy, who's our fellowship program coordinator. And I'm really excited to have her here with us, especially because she's going to be helping us out with the chat and the Q&A. So if I can have Stephanie introduce herself as well, you'll know who is answering your questions.
Hi, good morning. Stephanie Murphy here, Army spouse, and been with Hiring Our Heroes coming up almost a year. Very excited to try to field all these questions. We have a lot of information, so hope to help you guys out today. Enjoy.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. I appreciate it. So I want to share with you a little bit about our goals today. Obviously, we really want to share some ideas with our current hosts as well as prospective hosts, people who've been thinking about it and are interested in getting more involved, interested in finding ways to host fellows really effectively. We want to arm you with the tools you're going to need to maximize the value of the fellowship, both internally and for your fellows, ultimately so that you have success, so that at the end of the day, you have someone who you want to convert, that you want to hire, that you can't even imagine not extending an offer to. So that's really my goal. Thinking about how to maximize the value and the outcomes of the fellowship. I also want to share, if you're completely brand new to this, I'm making the assumption that people have some background on the program already, so feel free to weigh in with questions. But also, we are doing just a general program overview next Friday at 10 o'clock. So Stephanie will share the link to our events page to be able to register for that event. 10 o'clock Eastern time, I should say. And I don't think the registration is quite open, but early next week, that'll be open for anybody to be able to register for that event. And that's a deeper dive on exactly what the program looks like, nuts to bolts. So with that, a couple of housekeeping items. You'll notice if you scroll over the bottom that you have both a Q&A and a chat section. The chat is a good opportunity to post some comments to panelists, but the Q&A, if you have questions, that's the best place to really launch them for us to get to see them. Stephanie will be answering some that are more individualized in writing, and some will just get to, you may ask a question early on that we answered a couple slides later. And then I'm also planning to stop about halfway through, and Stephanie will feed us a couple of questions. And then at the end, we'll also be more than happy to take questions. So these are your opportunities. The more interactive, the better. So we are off and running with that. Also, one more note, which is the presentation will be posted in our career community channel in about a week. So if you're interested in sharing it with somebody else, feel free to do that and share the link with them down the road. And Stephanie's working on posting the link to our career community in the chat as well for you. Okay, so a few things I want to talk about before the fellowship begins. So let me tell you what happens really, really often in our program is, especially when we bring in a new company, we're working with a partner who's maybe part of the HR team, or who's maybe a hiring manager who really spends a lot of time talking with our team, gets excited about the program, is really, really ready to go, and starts bringing in fellows. But sometimes the message just doesn't necessarily translate to everybody else in the company who needs to know a little bit more about it. And so then they may have supervisors or hiring managers who are hosting fellows and just don't know enough about the program. They don't understand maybe the time commitment or the end result goals. So really encourage people to educate internally about the program. And I'll share that our program managers in all of our locations who do an amazing job have some great collateral they can share with you to help you do that. There's no reason why anybody should reinvent the wheel on how to kind of get the message out internally. Not only do we have a slide deck that gives an overview, we've got some documents on hosting fellows successfully, so that you don't have to start from scratch in educating your team about it. Also, definitely confirm there's an open role. As most of you know, the goal of the program is really jobs. It's creating job opportunities for military spouses and creating a talent pipeline for the host companies that are involved in the program. So the biggest commitment that we're asking from our host companies is that they truly foresee having an open role that they're looking to fill. And so that's something as well that you want to make sure to share with anybody else who's involved in the program to make sure that's where they're bringing fellows in. I want to turn it over to Steve to talk a little bit about assigning a mentor or buddy from his experience in hosting fellows.
Sure. So first of all, we like to call it a peer mentor, and just basically define that term. It's somebody that they're going to be working with day to day, sort of like they're shadowing the work that they're doing, the types of things that if they're assigned to either maintain a spreadsheet or make updates to a system, that person is right there with them pretty much during the day, and that they can go to for all those basic questions, right? And so we put a lot of effort into that throughout the interview process, getting to know the fellow, their personality, but also we present them with our different work streams as part of our interview questions to ask them, what is it that they want to do on our team? And we describe that body of work at a high level. And we sort of let them pick a little bit on the things that resonate with them the most. And then what we do is we sort of do a little bit of a matchmaking, if you will, as we know the members of our team very well. And so then we sort of scope out who might be a good personality match along with the work match, whatever. And so I do some work with that, and I present that to Christy and another director on our team. And then we sort of collaborate together on how we're going to pair them up and then send them on their way. So I would say it could be a buddy. I guess it could turn into that, but it's really a mentorship at the most basic level of here's my job and you're going to shadow me and we're going to work together. And I think that plays a critical role in the process and their success because, as you know, the fellowship's only 6 weeks. So it's critical for them to have somebody to turn to right when they need it.
Absolutely agree, Steve. Thanks so much. I also think this is a great opportunity to have Christy weigh in on how you get that level of buy-in from your leadership, especially if the program's a little bit newer to you. So I want to turn it over to Christy to speak about that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. I mean, I think you obviously, for USAA, we matched up with the overall mission of our company, and we are focused on supporting the military. But when that trickles down into, how do you support a fellowship program, it really is win-win, because if you think about an interview process, without a fellowship, you get an hour, maybe 2, you can do multiple interviews and you get an idea for the person's personality and skill set. But when you enter into a fellowship, you not only have that initial, hour interview, you have time where they're actually working alongside your team and you can evaluate team fit. And so I've found that that's really important. And when you get leadership buy-in, if you talk about building talent on your team, it's a really easy way for you to evaluate talent on a longer term basis without as much risk. And it really it just benefits everyone because you get to know the military spouse better, you get to know their skills, they bring stuff to the table right away, and you gain that work during the fellowship regardless of the outcome. However, when you go into the fellowship looking for what's listed as number 2, confirming there's an open role, you are able to evaluate that talent directly for what your opening is as well.
Thanks, Christy. I'm so excited that you mentioned the low risk. Because I think that's so important in adopting the program internally, is understanding that this is really a low risk way to have a talent pipeline on your team. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think most of the companies that we work with, they're greatly in it because they really do want to do the right thing by military spouses and and provide opportunities. But in the private sector, this is about profit as well. And so it's so important for people to understand the business case behind hiring military spouses. That is it the right thing to do? Yes. Is it helpful? Incredibly. But also for the leadership perspective as well, to understand the assets that military spouses are bringing to their team. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as I talk about the cross-section of spouses that we have in the program as well. Okay, let me go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So my first point I really want to talk about on this is developing a written plan. Obviously, incredibly important. I'll tell you, one piece of feedback we get fairly regularly from our fellows is about how they spend the first couple of weeks kind of trying to figure out how to insert themselves into their new role. Oftentimes a company has just brought somebody on board really quickly. They're super excited, but they're also busy. They have full-time jobs to do and then some very often. And so a fellow ends up getting kind of just left to their own devices. And that's where kind of laying the groundwork early on can be incredibly impactful. In the first phase, I really want to focus on, how do you normally onboard employees and what pieces of that do you want to pick up and apply to, fellows? Not all of them are going to apply right off the bat, but quite a few of them are, especially, making sure the tech is ready, making sure that the messaging is out there to share that we have somebody new who's joining the team short term at least, and introing them to all of the different players on the team. Timing for assessing fit. This is probably one of the most important things I want to talk about in here. And I put this up not to say this is your written plan as much as to say, think about what's going to work for you. 6 weeks is a really, really short fellowship. And what it really does is give you just enough time for a test drive. For a test drive on both sides, by the way. You know, it's the company looking at that fellow to say, we think they're going to be a fit for our team, and we really want to bring them on board, give them the opportunity to showcase their skill set, and let's find out. As well as for the fellow who's thinking, I think this is the right company and role for my next steps, and I want to get in there and learn more about it and find out if this is the right fit. With that said, those 6 weeks go by incredibly quickly, and a company that just is, you know, distracted by the rest of their day-to-day responsibilities will often find themselves at the end and still no plan for converting to hire. So I'll talk about that a little more in detail later, but I really want to say by about the halfway point, you should absolutely be thinking about where does this person fit into our organization? Is it in the role that we thought they would? Is it potentially in another role? And working towards conversion, getting that process started so that if you're going to have a job offer out there, that it's already on the table before the end of the program so that you can have a smooth conversion without any gap in service. So I want to turn this over to Steve and ask Steve to speak a little bit more about USAA's experience with this, what lessons they've learned in terms of pre-onboarding and onboarding as well.
Well, sure. So I think you've touched upon it well. And by the way, this is a great slide. This pretty much is our plan. I mean, we go into a lot more detail and we've expanded upon most of these touch points. But if you think about 6 weeks and the way the program's designed, it's only 24 working days, assuming there's no Monday holidays, right? So that's really not a lot of time for those members to get connected, create a name and a brand for themselves, and see an opportunity either for themselves or for the company to see them as a good fit for the work and the team. And so we spend a lot of time in this very, very beginning piece here, what I call pre-onboarding really. And so what we do is we look over the resumes, do a lot of work on screening there. And then before we get into the interviews, I do what I call a sort of a scoping interview or maybe a show and tell where I spend an hour with them on the phone and I really talk to them about the company, what the team is like, give them a few interview questions that we know we're going to ask them. And they're sort of freebies, but it really does help them feel grounded. And then they arrive at the hiring managers, which is Christy, and then our other one would be Ben, is that they arrive to them much better prepared and way and can articulately describe their skills and what they're capable of doing much better in a banking format, which is our arena. And so, but you know, it's interesting when we first tell them that they've been selected, you know, they're super excited, they're hungry, and they're anxious. And so the next phase of that is we just start feeding them information regularly. We're in regular updates with them, whether it's through social media like LinkedIn, or if it's sending them emails to say, hey, here's some homework to do. And this is really light and basic stuff. We're saying things like, hey, go watch a YouTube video on Salesforce, or be a little more skilled on your abilities to conduct yourself in a virtual meeting and know how to mute, how to present slides. Go look at those types of things if you haven't done that for a while. And then know how to manage the background you know, in your office space and the noise that's around you. Those type of things that will help them, because their exposure time is so short sometimes that if they can't get those small windows right, sometimes they lose a tremendous opportunity for themselves. So that's kind of fun doing the homework. And then the other thing we do throughout the project, but the time that they're here is they're doing their daily check-ins with their peer mentor and their networking, but they also do weekly check-ins with the hiring managers once a week, and then what we call our work stream leads once a week, so that we're hearing at multiple levels where maybe the roadblocks are for them, or how we can help them expand their network or share opportunities about the company, so that they can assess for themselves where a better opportunity might be, or if this is where their home is and where they want to stay, kind of thing. So it's been a lot of fun for us. I would say, you know, like I say, it goes quick, but I think having a good onboarding plan overall, and then we give our peer mentors a checklist to go by, and sort of not a day-to-day format, but an overall day-to-day sort of guideline for them to hit. And I think it keeps everybody organized, and the continuity of the program stays intact, so that by the time they enter and leave, they really haven't gone untouched, so to speak, at any point. That's it.
And let me piggyback on that just a little bit too, Crystal. So I realize that not everyone has a Steve. I am very fortunate to have somebody on my team that served directly, understands the overall mission, is tied into our military affairs group at USAA, et cetera. So, you know, coming on to this, the other director and I absolutely had an advantage. I mean, Steve knew a lot more than most employers do starting the journey. However, you know, we want to give you that knowledge so that you can benefit from all of the experience that we've had. So if you look at this slide and you've got that 6-week time frame, if you add that pre-onboarding, you have basically added at least a third onto that program just from a 1 to 2 week time frame. And there is obviously a difference between some of the capacity and capability of the peer mentors versus hiring managers or hiring directors. You know, a hiring manager or director may have obviously several direct reports, and so, you know, that goes to kind of this. And if you set it up where you have people on your team that can help you with that direct management, then it's even easier to participate. And so I wanted to just really like hone in on that some of those things, you know, may require a little bit more time of saying, hey, I'm going to find this YouTube video and I'm going to link this, but you may very well, as a hiring manager director, have somebody on your team that, you know, that is their jam. They really want to do that. They want to be able to have that direct people leadership aspect of it. And as a hiring manager or director, it might be easier for you just to send a message on LinkedIn, which is typically what I've been doing over the last couple of weeks as we prepare for our next cohort. That's easy. It takes a few minutes, but I already feel connected to the people that are going to start virtually with us on Tuesday.
Thanks for sharing that up, Christy. I particularly like your phrase, not everyone has a Steve.
Yes, I'm
so
very fortunate.
It's true. And thanks for addressing that. And I so agree with the concept of utilizing that time pre-onboarding even to basically extend the fellowship, to take it from a 6-week to an 8 or 9 week experience, giving your organization the time to really assess fit, to prepare fellows, and the fellows a longer experience to do the same, to assess for fit. So great ideas. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Crystal, there was a question I just saw that about the smaller companies that may not have like the peer mentor or buddy, but I would say that, you know, maybe that is a way to screen a little bit more about somebody who can operate more independently, that may understand your work line or business a little bit better. And so maybe they could operate a little more independently. Whereas sometimes when we're throwing people into a banking environment, it's challenging even for people that have been in. I've only been there 2 years and it's still challenging for me. So we sort of are kind of set up to peer them up. But if you could pre-screen a little bit, I think maybe you wouldn't need a day-to-day mentor possibly.
Great, thanks for that, Steve. And you're absolutely right. There's benefits and challenges of being a small business. You certainly have the ability to pivot a little bit more easily and make choices about that. Okay, so if you've spent any time with me, you've probably heard my little soapbox word, which is transparency. And I think it fits really, really nicely with this slide. It's so important that our host companies convey exactly what they're looking for, exactly what the potential is for a role with their company. You know, as much as you can, convey the salary range. I know that, you know, many companies really don't like to do that early on, but I have seen some true heartbreaks over the years where we have companies who are absolutely loving their fellow who is over the moon about this new opportunity, and then we come down to that, you know, 1-page written offer, and we've completely missed each other, and expectations have you know, really fallen off. So I would say, you know, early on, be as transparent as possible. If you're looking to fill a part-time role, let the person know that during interviews. We certainly have military spouses who are looking for that. So let's get you the right fit up front so that everybody has success in the end. The importance, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of this third bullet, assigning challenging work and projects. This is so critical. One, it really gives you a focus, and also gives the fellow the opportunity to roll up their sleeves and dig into the work and show you, are they the right fit for the role you thought they were? Is this going to be the kind of work they want to be doing long term? They can really let you know through this if this is the right kind of role for them or not, and show you what they're bringing to the table. So it's incredibly important, as well as providing the networking and the cross-functional opportunities to really meet the other business lanes on your team. And that way, if this isn't the right role, potentially we're opening up other opportunities that might be a better fit. And with that, I want to ask Christy to talk a little bit about that and kind of, alignment and fit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have had a couple of different opportunities through Hiring Our Heroes. And so with the first set of military spouses that we knew that we likely had some opportunities on our team, both in the full-time realm, and then I have a large staff aug of contract employees as well. And so we went into it, saying, hey, we're not positive exactly how this is going to go, but we also feel like we have opportunities. We had one military spouse fellow that it became apparent that it wasn't a good fit directly with the work that we had assigned her. I think that the work we had assigned definitely fit in that third bullet of challenging work. And what it allowed us to see is that it just wasn't a good fit and alignment for her. We quickly moved into that broadening and really, networking. And it turned out that while our team is very much focused on like the program project management piece, and a lot of people are very successful in that realm, this particular individual was more had an audit background, mindset, et cetera, and it just didn't translate directly. However, through some networking opportunities and an open position, she actually landed a full-time position at USAA within audit directly. And so for us, like, that is a win. You get talent directly for USAA for the common mission, even though it wasn't on our team. And so success looks a lot of different ways when it comes to that. And so I just keep that in mind as you look into going in this opportunity, that as long as you are doing these things that you see on the slide of communicating, sharing your fellow's background across the organization, assigning things will work out, because it's going to be much more evident where the person's strengths are and fit is within your company. And success can look like landing a full-time position on your team. Success can look like translating into a longer-term contract role, which I've been able to do several times on both the military spouse and the corporate fellow side of the house, which saves me interview time, et cetera. Success can also look like them landing in a different place in your organization. And all of that is success, both for the military spouse fellow and for your company as well.
Sorry for the pause. I'm here. Thanks, Christy. Thanks for that. I think it's important to broaden our definition of what success looks like sometimes, right? And if the company is gaining talent, then there's no question in my mind, at least. So I appreciate that you speak about that. Let's go to the next slide. There's more. So just a few more quick hints and tips here. Obviously, creating access, making those introductions to key people on your team, and creating opportunities for people to sit in on meetings, even if it's not directly related to their role. Scheduling a performance evaluation. I want to say that's incredibly important, especially if things aren't exactly going exactly how you think, how you'd like to see them going. Then you want to be able to let somebody know that, so they have the opportunity to adjust course or learn from it and figure out where they do fit, and how they best serve the company. So incredibly important. I also want to touch on educating your fellow about unwritten rules. Every culture in every company is slightly different. And I think in your first 6 weeks, especially, it can be incredibly difficult to figure out those things that aren't, in your company's introduction. And so that's where, as Steve was talking about the importance of a mentor, that's where they can come in. Also, if you have the opportunity to assign just a buddy, somebody who's more a peer level, or who's another military spouse or a service member, where they can ask the dumb questions and not feel intimidated. That can be incredibly helpful as well for things like understanding the hierarchy, the unwritten rules. And I also want to hit on this point about bragging about your involvement in the program. If you don't have a copy of the social media kit, then I want you to get off of this webinar when it's done and send a note to your program manager and ask about the social media kit. So it's not complicated, it's not anything intensive, but it just gives you some really good ideas about how to share about your involvement in the program, and go on social media and shine a light not only on your fellows, but on your company and the work they're doing to support military spouses. So it's a great opportunity to tell that story, which is so incredibly impactful, to make sure you're absolutely on that. Let me pause here for a moment. I want to see if we have any questions. So I'll ask Stephanie to chime in with any questions we've got going on.
Absolutely. So the one Steve did already address about a smaller company, mentors, and how that would work. So the next one is talking about, they understand the preferred outcome is to have a full-time position for the fellowship. However, some companies, especially smaller ones, may not have immediate positions. So can you touch on a little bit about the extension of the program, or how maybe to do it more for experience or apprenticeship type situation?
That's a great question. Let me take that one on, and I'll see if Steve and Christy want to add anything. So I hear a couple of different things in that. One of them is about, what if you have the opportunity to host someone for experience, but there's not necessarily a role at the end? And I'll offer a couple of answers on that. Really, in the short term right now, given the COVID situation and the new normal right now, we are being a little bit more flexible on things like that, and offering people just the opportunity to get their foot in the door, to build their experience, as long as, again, we're transparent about that. That's what it really is. I really wouldn't want somebody thinking they're coming in for a fellowship with an opportunity to be hired at the end if that wasn't there. In the long run, we will still always come back to that the mission of the program is jobs and true job opportunities, and opportunities to access talent for our partners. So we're really looking for that commitment, for the most part, from our companies, to say, we really believe there's going to be a role at the end of this, and we are committed to that test drive, essentially. So if there's any questions on it, definitely have a longer conversation with your program manager locally, who can really talk you through the ins and outs on it. The second part of the question I think I heard was in terms of, what if we have a part-time role? And I mentioned this really briefly earlier, but we certainly have some applicants who would prefer that. Frankly, my kids keep me, on the run all the time. There's definitely points in my life where I would have much preferred a really good career advancing part-time role to working full-time. And I think that's true for a lot of our military spouses who balance, a lot of things on their plate from day to day. So coming right back to transparency and being open about what's realistic, I definitely think there's the opportunity to hire part-time roles through the fellowship program. Steve, Christy, anything you want to add on that question?
The only thing that is just to be creative as well, because when we first started, even though I had such a large contractor staff log, like, that didn't occur to me that was actually a path. And so I think just being open to looking around and just not saying, oh, well, I don't have an open full-time role, so I don't have a position, doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, maybe you will have something, or you haven't like looked at the overall strategy, you know, those types of things. So just be open and creative. I mean, sometimes you really don't, and we know that. And that goes back to the transparency that you mentioned, Crystal. Like if people know what they're getting into, then they can make an informed decision. And so, but as a company, I think we have a responsibility to just look around and see if there are creative options to get closer to that goal of a full-time position.
Hey, Crystal. So my favorite question just popped up in the panel there because it's the first question I approached Christy with, or she approached me with, was, can we host the military spouses? This is invaluable for us. And she said, how much does it cost? And the answer is zero, right? And because the program is funded for them to serve on a fellowship, and then your cost is just whatever it takes to bring somebody into your company and teach them and give them a fellowship. But that was invaluable for us to kickstart this and get going and bring, you know, and so sometimes we try to bring in 2 or 3 at a time. And so this last rotation with the corporate fellows as well, we brought in a few extras across our sister teams. And so it's been very rewarding for us.
Fantastic. I love your goose egg there, Steve, like 0.
There you go. I love it.
Well, and it's funny when you take that up as well, because my assistant vice president, when I said, hey, we're going to do this is what I want to do, but I'm checking with you before I say yes, she's like, okay. And I explained, you know, the benefit and, you know, skill and how it tied to the mission. And then we didn't have an additional, you know, budget line item. And she's like, is there a reason I should say no? And I was like, no, there's absolutely not. I just need you to say yes.
I love that. And I think, you know, I'm looking over our attendees. I think, you know, most of them are very familiar with our organization, but if you're newer to it, I will add, we're a nonprofit, right? We are the nonprofit arm of the United States Chamber of Commerce, and we're really just in it for the mission. And the mission is opening up great opportunities to transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses at the local level as well as nationally, and opening up talent pipelines to companies. So really helping them see where that talent is at and plugging into that talent. So we absolutely love what we're able to do with this program and all the rest of our programming. Thanks for that. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so a few points I would make on here. Your veterans resource groups, absolutely. Get your fellows plugged into them right away. When I mentioned earlier, you know, having a buddy who's also a military spouse or a veteran, that's a great way to get them really quickly plugged into that. And you know, with people who look at things through a similar set of lenses, right? Providing access to your network, not only internally, but externally. One of the biggest challenges often of being a military spouse is that they've moved around and had to rebuild a network in every location they go to. How do most people find their jobs? Through their networks. So we're talking about a pool of talent that is highly educated, that's extremely flexible, that's highly committed, that's incredibly capable, and greatly challenged because of this lack of a network. So as you are mentoring, as you are stepping in to become involved in the program, helping them grow their networks, building these bridges around our fellows, it's incredibly impactful. Introducing them to key players in the organization. And of course, we have a variety of different events that go on with our program. We have networking receptions, usually during every cohort, as well as graduations. I've been incredibly proud how quickly our team has been able to convert those to virtual events as of late. Although I'm going to admit publicly that I can't wait to get back to our in-person events and see our partners and our friends face to face. But in the meantime, I'm really excited that we're able to continue to do this. So definitely get involved in that. Also, I'll add that it is a great visual. There's some great moments that come with that in terms of graduation and being able to blast out those pictures to the world about what the experience has been with your fellows and with the program. As well as at our networking receptions, you have the ability to tap into talent that's not necessarily your fellows. You meet candidates as well as meeting other fellows in the program who may still be looking for that right opportunity. Next slide. flipping my own slides as I go here. Okay, so obviously with the current situation, I couldn't really have this discussion without making some really targeted comments about virtual fellowships. And I'll be frank, as we look at next steps over the next few years, we're really looking at virtual fellowships being, a primary target. And in the long run, for military spouses, virtual employment, remote employment is sort of a golden ticket, especially if you're still an active duty spouse. That ability to continue committing to that company is such a fantastic opportunity for the company as well as for the spouse. So we really look at how do we continue to retain the high value of the fellowship program and ensure it's not diluted when we move to virtual fellowship. So a few hints on that. Really, really be careful about fleshing out the plan ahead of time. Otherwise, it's incredibly easy to be halfway through it and realize that you haven't really done much in terms of utilization with that fellow and integrating them into the team. Setting up regular meetings and face-to-face as much as possible. And by that, obviously, I mean Zoom or Teams or whatever platform your company's most helpful with. Don't forget that as people are getting to know each other, most of our communication comes through body language, so it can be really easy to misinterpret guidance or advice or thoughts when there's no face-to-face. So making sure that there's that face-to-face time in there to really build rapport, to really help fellows feel incorporated into the team is incredibly important. And building them, as I said earlier, into meetings, even if it's not, strictly tied to their role, to give them that bigger picture of what it's like to work in your organization, in your business lane, in these types of roles. Next slide. Okay, so again, the goal here is converting to hire. And so I want to set you up for success to be able to do that on your team really effectively. And as I said, that 6 weeks goes by incredibly quickly. So start early. I also want to really make the point to say, there's no reason to wait 6 weeks. If by week 2 you have a hiring manager that says, I got to have this person on my team and I don't want them in interviews with other companies anymore, then start working on that conversion. Start working on getting an offer in front of them quickly to be able to make that conversion. I have no concerns whatsoever. Somebody does 3 weeks of fellowship and on the 4th week reports in as an employee. That is such a win. And to me and to our program managers, that's a celebration when that happens, when we have that kind of opportunity. And Steve talked about this earlier, and I'll ask him later to kind of touch back on it as well. Preparing your fellows for your organization's interview process. I'll use one of our partners, Amazon, as a great example of this as well. Amazon has a really, really specific interview process. And if somebody goes into it not knowing what the expectations are, not only are they going to be completely overwhelmed, but the chances are very, very slim that they will succeed in that process. You really have to do your homework, and you can help fellows prepare for what your internal process is, what the important touch points are, and what that's going to look like so that they're set up for that kind of success. So let me ask Steve to weigh in a little bit with how they're doing that at USAA.
Sure. So like you said, I did touch a little bit on this, but usually when we have a pretty good idea of who we're going to want to interview in the process, after sort of screening the resumes, but also just sort of picking specific skill sets that we're interested in, and then bouncing those off the team, we start that process of interviews. We'll get them on the phone, and I'll usually spend time going over what the culture's like at the company, how we're structured, a host of companies and staff agencies under one name, and then what the role is of all those are to the bank, and why we have a job in the bank. And then we talked more specifically about the different work streams that we're coming into. And I try to keep it, not too detailed, of course, because it's outside their relevant experience most of the time. But they have a lot of leadership ability, a lot of life experience that they bring, and that's the type of stuff, those skill sets, that energy, and that diversity is what we really like, and that's what we focus on mainly, is their ability to handle some technical data in a sort of a gray environment where it's not always obvious what the right answer is right away, but the good team fit. And so we spend that time up front so that when they arrive at the interview with Christy, they can speak specifically about work streams on our team and apply their skills to that and answer those questions. It makes it a much better success story.
Thanks for that. Right on target, Steve. I appreciate it. Next slide, please. Okay, so as we start to get close to wrapping up, I really wanted to include a little bit of information in here, just a larger picture, right? The 10,000-foot view. I mentioned that we really launched this program last summer following a pilot program that we had the pleasure of running in Maryland that really showed the proof of concept that this was going to work. So we've already had over 250 spouse fellows complete the program, and this is what the lay of the land looks like for them. 85% of them have had a job offer at the end of the program. This is not, for some it might be a surprising statistic, but really it's not. So generally speaking, military spouses tend to be higher educated than their civilian counterparts, and that information is translating exactly over to the fellowship program. 86% have a bachelor's or higher. Here's what's not on the slide. 45% have a master's or higher. So we have an incredibly educated, ready to go talent pool here. So as you're thinking about maybe where the best roles would be on your team, I get asked all the time, well, you know, what roles do you see most commonly? And frankly, I have a really hard time answering it because we see everything. We see roles across the board, and which is why the interview process is so incredibly important up front, is figuring out, you know, who has those skill sets and interests that you're looking for. But I will say we have a harder time with entry-level roles because we do tend to get people who are really highly educated, who have a fair amount of experience. So consider that as you're considering you know, how to implement the program in your company, as well as I've got the average starting salary. Obviously, that's really, really different, say, you know, in San Antonio than it is from our capital region program, just some basic cost of living factors, so that there is a wide range there. And I'll remind you that, you know, your program managers locally are your best resource. So especially if you're located in one area and you're working primarily with one of the program managers, make sure you have all of the collateral, make sure you're problem solving with them moving forward, figuring out how to best implement in your company. If you're dealing with multiple locations or just getting involved, definitely feel free to reach out directly to me. I would love to talk with you more about it and help you kind of design that internally. Stephanie will make sure to put my email in the chat box if you don't already have it. And then just before we wrap, I want to turn it over to Steve and Christy for some kind of, you know, final thoughts or things we may have missed as we go through our discussion.
Sure. Well, I'll just kick it off and then just hand it over to Christy. But I would say that, you know, we have benefited from this program because of the diversity and the energy that these folks bring, these fellows in the MilSpouse community bring in terms of our mission alignment, but also just engagement with our team and their ability to just fit in. And so it's been a pleasure to work with them. It's been a pleasure to bring them on board in a contracting role and see them succeed in things that they've been doing for years, which is you know, leading their families in across the globe, quite frankly, as they do all the military moves and stuff. So it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just echo that. I mean, if you have the opportunity to participate in the program, I highly encourage you to do that. If you're already participating in the program and you're participating in the webinar today just to gain some more information, you know, continue to share your knowledge that you've gained. So, you know, Steve and I gave you our perspective from our company. Obviously, there's a wide range and diversity within the company. So our hope today was just to tell you some things that have worked for us so that you can gain that. I'm looking forward to continuing to learn from other people as well, so that we can continue to make our experience for our future military spouse fellows even better as well.
Thanks so much, Christy. Thanks, Steve. Stephanie, did we have any other questions? I've kind of been going through, but I know you see them better than I do. Any other questions that we haven't answered yet?
So there were just a couple of more touch points on the length of having a fellow on. So what happens if you want to do what we would call a direct hire instead of even starting day one of the fellowship? And then a follow-on question with that would be, what happens if it's not a success story and the fellow's not a fit? How can we address that?
Two great questions. Okay, so let me take on direct hires first. So what we call direct hire is essentially when a company says either, for whatever reason, legal is concerned about this program and us taking on fellows, or the hiring manager really just needs to fill this role right now. Whatever it is, if company says, I really just want to hire this spouse right now, am I going to stand in the way of that? No, I'm not, because that's a win for both, right? As long as the fellow is good with that and the company is good with that, our host companies are more than welcome to go ahead and directly hire our candidates immediately without that test drive. So that's the test drive question. Remind me the second piece of the question, Stephanie.
Sure. So what happens when the situation's not a fit?
When it's not a fit.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, so that happens. And that's why, I'm usually pretty careful when somebody asks, what is the commitment the companies are making? And I say that the commitment is that they have an open requisition that they're looking to fill, and that they only bring someone on board if they truly want to do that test drive. With that said, the test drive is there for a reason. Sometimes it's just not a fit on either side. Occasionally we definitely have spouses who say, oh gosh, I thought this was like my dream role and I want to go completely in another direction. So it does happen on both sides. So, the bottom line on that is if you have something that's not a fit, one, communicate that early and open that discussion so that in terms of expectation management, we're being open and transparent with the fellows about what is reasonable. What would be heartbreaking to me is for a fellow to get to the end, through those 6 weeks thinking, oh yeah, this is my next step. That job offer is coming. They love me for this role, and then find that out at the last moment. Really, just want to be open about that. And then a couple of things I would ask. One is look to see if there's another opportunity that is the right fit in your organization. Sometimes there's not. If that's the case, be open to helping them network and looking for opportunities. And of course, be just as open and transparent about this with the program manager so that the program manager can really be starting to talk with that fellow about other opportunities and looking in other directions as well. So hopefully that hit it on those two. A couple of other things that I wanted to add in too, timelines for right now. Today actually is the last day for interviews for our 20-2 cohort that's going to be starting in the next few weeks. However, given the current situation, definitely not all of our candidates have been placed. So in the very short term, if you are looking especially for a direct hire or potentially to place a fellow, definitely reach out to your program manager or reach out to me and say, we're interested right now in potentially hosting a fellow, and we can get resumes in front of you quickly to see if we might be able to make a match. For our fall cohorts that will start at the end of August, we are currently taking candidates for that. The window for that closes towards the end of June, and we'll be sharing resumes early in July. So if you're thinking a little bit more long-term, be looking for resumes to be coming at you in early July for that cohort. The one other thing I did want to share is I'm incredibly excited to say that yesterday we launched a brand new fellowship program that is also a program for military spouses. So we have partnered up with our friends at Salesforce to create fellowships for military spouses and veterans who are Salesforce certified. And the idea is to really give them the experience, the hands-on experience in those roles to become much more competitive for roles. It's a 12-week fellowship program. Like I said, it's for people who have Salesforce certification. So by the way, if that's not you, but you're interested in it, Salesforce creates that opportunity for veterans and military spouses for free to take the classes and become certified in those roles. And we're talking about one of the fastest growing companies out there that cannot fill full roles fast enough, essentially. So these are great roles and great opportunities if you're at all interested. As a host, by the way, if you're utilizing Saleswork as your Saleswork, it is Friday, right? If you're utilizing Salesforce as your platform and you're interested in hosting fellows, reach out to your local program manager for more information, or reach out for me or go on the website and learn a little bit more about the program. But I'm really, really excited to have launched this program as another great opportunity for our companies, for our partners, as well as for our military spouses. With that said, I think it's about that time. It's 10:56, so we're right on schedule. And I really just want to say, first and foremost, thanks so much to Christy and to Steve for not only joining us today, but for being great partners and always creating fantastic opportunities for our military spouses. I'm incredibly grateful for your friendship and partnership. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate it. As I've said, reach out with any questions. You have my email. You have all of our points of contact on our website for all the program managers and for Stephanie. We really appreciate you guys coming on board as hosts, and we want to set you up for success wherever we can. Again, thanks so much, and have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.